and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we're doing our grade 2 English lesson on adverbs. And before we start on a lesson on adverbs, you're going to log in to aplusstudents.ca. All right, so we're going to log into aplusstudents.ca, and then we log in with our username as well as our password. All right, and then we're going to select the subject of language arts, grade 2, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of adverbs, right? So our chapter is adverbs. Our subject is English language arts, grade 2. And the lessons that we're going to be focusing on under the chapter of adverbs is, does the adverb tell you how, when, or where? So does the adverb tell you how, when, or where? All right. So we're going to say what an adverb is, right? And an adverb, it's a word that tells you more about a verb, right? So an adverb is a word that tells you more about a verb. And when it comes to, right? And it tells you how, it tells you when, and it also tells you where. So an adverb is a word that tells you more about the verb, and it tells you how, when, or where. All right. So some adverbs, right, they tell you how. We said that an adverb it tells you how, when, or where, and some adverbs they tell you how. And these adverbs, right, they usually end in ly. So the adverbs that tell you how, they usually end in ly, right? So it's like asking yourself, like, how does she run? She runs quickly. Quickly. So that word ly at the back of our verb, it basically gives an indication of how he or she ran, right? So he or she ran quickly. And some of the adverbs that tells you when, all right. And then we also said that adverbs that tell you when. So we said that he leaves soon, right? And this is basically adverbs that also tells you when. Because remember we said an adverb, it tells you how, it tells you when, and it tells you where. So now an adverb that tells us when, so we also said an adverb tells you or tells you where, right? Because we went over how, went over when, and now it also tells us when, right? Where. And basically some adverbs that tell you where. For example, where do they play? Then we can just say they play outside. So this is basically our adverbs, right? It's where we say that an adverb is a word that tells you more about the verb, and it tells you how, it tells you when, and it tells you where. And we see that some of the adverb tells us how, right? All right. All right. So we say that with our lessons, right? One of our lessons is of adverbs is does the adverb tell you how, when, or where? And we're going to identify adverbs, right? My screen is blurred. Let me double check. I don't know how to fix that. I can't seem to fix the screen that is blur. All right, let's go to aplusstudents.ca. So we say that does the adverb tell you how, when, or where? So basically, an adverb is a word that tells you more about the verb, and it tells you how, when, or where. And we said some of the adverb tells us how, and they usually end in ly, right? So of course, at times I'm going to repeat certain words, but I'm going to repeat it because I'm going to read it again in order for you to understand it, right? So we said that some of these words end in ly, right? And for example, how does she run? All right. And also we have adverbs that tells you when, right? So adverbs that tells you when, as like when does it leave, you can use words like soon, tomorrow, yesterday, today, right? Those are specific words that you can also use. And then some adverbs tells you where. and then we tell adverbs that tells us where, and the question is where do they play? And they play outside, right? All right, so now it says that look at the adverb in bold. Does it tell you when or where? So we say that look at the adverb in bold, and then we're going to have to draw, we're going to have to say, does it tell you when or does it tell you where? The science club meets tomorrow. I really don't know how to remove it from the blur. There isn't even an option to make it smaller. Right? So we say that if we look at the adverb in bold, right, does it tell us when or does it tell us where? The science club meets tomorrow. So if we hear the word tomorrow, right, tomorrow is our adverb, and then it basically tells us when. So even if we were to say the science club meets soon, the science club means later, the science club meets next week, that basically is the question or ask the question of when. And then if we go to the next one, it says, look at the, I don't know how to remove it from being blurry, guys. Is like everyone's blur or just one person's blur? Is that much better? All right, so it says now, look at the adverb in bold. We have the adverb quickly in bold. Does it tell you how or does it tell you when? And if we look at that sentence, right, it says, look at the adverb in bold. Does it tell you how or does it tell you when? And if they say the fish swims quickly, right, quickly, and then we can basically say quickly is then saying how. right? Quickly is like how. And remember, we also said that quickly, right? If we say how, and then it's also the word or the houses ends with ly. All right. So we said that an adverb, right? It tells you more about the verb, and an adverb it tells you how, when, or where. Guys, I honestly don't know. I really tried. Is it only the two of you, or are there more learners who cannot see? Like, are they the others that also cannot see, or just the two of you? Because I don't know what else to do. Because I don't know how. I don't know how to remove the blur for you guys. Is it only the two of you who cannot see, or the others also? Because if I go out now, and then it means that I'm going to be done with the lesson. I don't know how to remove it from being blurry, guys. I am really sorry. Because, like I say, if I go out now, and then it means that I'm basically ending the lesson. All right, can I continue in the meantime, and then maybe you can just like listen a bit, or what? Because I don't know how to remove it from it being blur. All right, so we said that an adverb, right? It's a word that tells you more about the verb, and it tells us how, when, or where, right? And your adverbs, they either tell you how, as in how she ran, how she did something, and that ends with an ly, right? And then we have adverbs that tells us when. So it's like, when does he leave? When is he coming? When is he going? It can be soon, it can be tomorrow, it can be later, right? That basically tells us when. And then an adverb also tells us where. Then you can maybe say things like outside, inside, right? Those are examples of where, right? Or adverbs that tells us where. So it's like asking themselves, how do you play? Where do you play? Playing outside, I'm playing inside, I'm playing in front, I'm playing at the back, right? All right, so now we're going to our test where we're going to say, does it tell us how, when, or where? So we need to look at the adverb in bold, right? Does it tell you when or does it tell you where? The adverb in bold, does it tell you where or does it tell you when? Ashley's dog always barks. So now we need to look at the adverbs in bold. Does it tell you when or does it tell you where? Ashley's dog always barks. Does it tell you when or does it tell you where? So Ashley's dogs always barks. So we need to say if it's when or we need to say if it's where. So if we basically look at the adverb in bold, right? We need to say, does it tell you when or does it tell you where? So Ashley's dog always barks, right? And always barks, then we can say it is when. When does he bark? He always barks. So when is correct. Look at the adverb in bold, right? Does it tell you how or does it tell you where? So the adverb in bold, does it tell you how or does it tell you where? He sang well. All right, so look at the adverb in bold. Does it tell you how or does it tell you when? He sang well. All right, so we will say look at the adverb in bold. Does it tell you how or does it tell you when? Where? He sang well. Is it how or where? I'm saying look at the adverb in bold. Does it tell you how or does it tell you where? He sang well. So well, he sang well. Is that telling us how or is that telling us where? He sang well. Does it tell us how or does that tell us where? All right. So if we look at the adverb in bold, right? If they say he sang well, and then it's like you can ask yourself, how did he sing, right? Then you can say it basically is how. So the adverb in bold tells us how. And how is correct. How is basically the correct answer. So now we need to look at the adverb in bold. Does it tell you how or does it tell you when? Fred quietly reads. So Fred quietly reads. Does it tell us how or does it tell us when he reads? How he reads or when he reads? Fred quietly reads. So once again, does it tell you how or does it tell you when? Fred quietly reads. All right, so if we were to ask like Fred quietly reads, remember we said the when it tells you how, right, then that basically means that how tells us, or basically the adverb ends in ly. So how it is. Does it tell you how or where? He waved sadly. So he waved sadly. So does it tell you how he waved or does it tell you when he waved? So he waved sadly. So does that mean how or does it tell us where he waves? He waved sadly. Does that tell us how or does that tell us where? All right, so if we say basically he waved sadly, then we can say how did he wave? He waved sadly. And it basically tells us how. Look at the adverb in bold, right? So tomorrow. Does it tell you when or does it tell you where? So the science club meets tomorrow. Does it tell us when they're meeting or does it tell us where they're meeting? So if we say the science club meets tomorrow, then we can basically ask ourselves like, oh, when are they meeting? Right? They are meeting tomorrow. When are they meeting? They are meeting tomorrow. Right? All right. So does the adverb tell us how, when, or where? Now we're going to identify adverbs, right? And we say that an adverb is a word that tells you more about the verb and it tells you how, when, or where, right? And also, as much as it tells you more about the verb, it also tells us, it can also tell us more about an adverb or an adjective, right? All right. So we're going to identify and then we're also going to select adverbs, right? And we said an adverb is a word that tells you more about the verb, an adverb, or another adjective, right? And if we look at the activity, it says select the adverb that tells about the verb in bold. All right. And if we look at our activity, right, it says select the adverb that tells you about the verb in bold. And with the adverbs, right, that tells us more about the verb, we said some adverbs that tell us how, when, or where. And we made a few examples because I feel like we've been repeating the same thing, right? But now we need to select the adverb that tells us about the verb in bold. And the hint is where or how did Lisa's friend fall, right? All right. It says here, select the adverb that tells you more about the verb within bold, right? And the hint is how did the boys sing? So how did the boys sing? So we need to select the adverb that tells us the verb in bold. All right, so we said that select the adverb that tells us about the verb in bold. Right, so we hinted how did the boy sing? So it says here he sang well in bold, right? So which means that we need to select the adverb that tells us about the world in bold. So we need to select the adverb that tells us how well he sings. And he sings very well, right? So the word well is our adverb. So well is our adverb. Sing or sang is our verb, right? So sing or sang is our verb. And now we need to select the adverb that tells us about the verb in bold. How did the door close? The door closed loudly. So the door closed loudly. So we need to select the adverb that tells us about the verb in bold. For example, how did the door close? So how did the door close? And the door closed loudly. And if we were to select the adverb, we would select it as in loudly. All right. So loudly, especially if we ask the question, how did the door close? How did something happen? Right? So now we go to our test. We are now by the test. We need to say, we need to identify the adverb. Select the adverb that tells about the verb in bold. So it says that we need to select the adverb that tells us about the verb in bold. When does Mr. Finley teach? So when does it teach? And our we are basically Mr. Finley. Mr. Finley teaches us today or teaches today. All right. So when does Mr. Finley teach? Is it today or he teaches? Is it today or he teaches? And we can say he teaches today. And today is great. How are the kids playing? So how are the kids playing? Is it the kids are playing nicely or all right, so how are the kids playing? So especially if they're saying the word how, then you just look at the last word and see that there's an ly. So the kids are playing nicely. So which means that nicely is so Lisa's friend fell down. So it's like where or how did Lisa's friend fell down? So is it down being the navigator or friend being the navigator? So we said we select the adverb that tells us about the verb in both. Where or how did Lisa's friend fall? So Lisa's friend fell down. and down being our adverb. All right. When or how did my team finish? When or how did my team finish? Did my team finish early? So we can say my team finished early. So this year it is year instead of finished. So my team finished early, which means that early. And then my team finished early. So if you start early or finish early, it basically tells you either early or yes. So it means that early is our adverb, right? Early is our adverb. All right, so let's do the last one. How did the boys sing? And we say he sang very well, right? So he sang well. So which means that if we say the adverb and tell us that is what that the adverb, sorry, that is supposed to have been in bold, then we say it is well. Right? And well is correct. And when or how does Gabby race? Do we say Gabby races next? So Gabby races next. So when do they race? Next. All right. Right. So we see that we did adverbs, and adverbs they tell you how, when, or where, right? And adverbs also tell you about other adverbs as well as other adjectives, right? But an adverb, it tells us how, it tells us where, and it tells us when. All right, so this is now the end of our lesson on adverbs. Thank you very much for joining the class. I do apologize for the screen being blurry for some of you. Do apologize. But till next time, have a good evening further. Goodbye.